Hello.
Hey, Stacy.
Just finishing up some stuff. Be there in 1 second.
Are you no vid for COVID?
I've been no vid. I cannot believe the way I show up to these meetings. There was a time that I didn't leave my house without makeup. Now you see me literally as I look when I wake up out of bed.
That's good, right? Perfectly fine, right? Nothing wrong with that.
It is, but you know, it is.
Hello.
Yes. Hey, Glenn.
I heard there was an 8-hour marathon last Saturday. I haven't had the chance to watch it, but that
Some
sounded
people,
interesting.
yeah.
What happened there?
I didn't stay on the whole 8 hours. I think Colin did.
I think it was 7.5.
Yeah.
And Glenn, the good thing is it's broken into 3 parts. So 3 separate recordings. Right? Right?
I'm a few weeks behind on posting, as you guys know.
Do you have it on your YouTube page? Sam?
Not yet. Not yet. I'm, like I said, about 3 or 4 weeks behind on posting videos and getting those docs created. I could post them just so you guys can see them, but I was following a process.
There should be a mechanism where if there's no audio coming through the pipe, it'll pause the video and stop recording, because it means nobody's talking and everybody's left the meeting. So if it keeps running, you'll end up with a 5-hour, 6-hour video.
That's not what happened last week, though. Yeah.
The last 2 hours, there's nothing there.
You know what I'm thinking? If you like post it to the thread immediately, like you said, even before you get a chance to do all this stuff, you might be surprised that maybe somebody, not me because I'm not tech, I can't do that, but you might be surprised somebody like Glenn might come along and do the transcript part of it, or somebody else.
Well, I've been doing this for about 3 years, and that's happened maybe once or twice.
So that means you're never going to try it again, right?
No, I will. I'm just saying I have tried it. I'm always willing to try again. I'm just saying that it has been an experiment that has been attempted, at least. I think when I did my survey of, are you aware of the document that I create with the transcript, with the inline notes, I think only 2 people said that they had actually gone back and made additions to that document.
This is a little different.
That was me. I went back twice.
Yeah.
This is a little different because in this case, I'm suggesting that you put it in our thread where we already have like this bond going, where if somebody found themselves with extra time, they're happy to, like Tees is great at that. Tees is constantly sending me stuff that is so helpful.
Yeah.
And you know, the idea of it not being solicited, I'm not putting that pressure on him. I'm not saying, can you do this for me? But he happens to, it's sort of like see something, say something.
Yep. No, it's definitely good. And just so you know, part of the reason is, only part, okay, is that as of tomorrow, my son will have been here for 2 weeks. And he and I both work still. So he has a lot of meetings, I have a lot of meetings. When he has meetings, I try not to use the internet very much. Like, for example, each of these video files is 1 to 2 gigabytes, okay? So when he's doing video meetings or he's doing pair programming or, you know, any other kind of discussions, I try to make sure that I'm not affecting him. So that means that I pretty much have to do this all in the evenings. And in the evenings, we've introduced this new thing where now Ronnie, Nick, and I are playing ping pong close to 2 hours a day. It's kind of a cool
Great.
thing. Yeah, so we watch less
Nice.
TV and we're actually interacting more as, like family.
That's
That sounds
actually
like
pretty
a
important.
good idea. That sounds like a really
Like
good
resembling
idea.
family,
That's important work.
Yeah, we need more of that. More, doing stuff with the body and
Yep.
being physically active. It's very good.
Yeah, and I've been doing more Tai Chi also. I mean, I've gotten myself up to about twice a week, which is still not very good, but it's better than 0 times per week, which is what it was a few weeks ago.
I think 3 times a week would be ideal, but that's me.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the time when I was doing it 6 or 7 times a week. That I did that for a few years, and that felt really good.
Did you feel a lot better than?
I did.
things-
I did. I lost my temper less. I was much more in control. I had a better sense of humor. I think that's what actually happens. You have a better sense of humor when you're more relaxed, when you breathe more, when you're more connected, when you're less stressed. I think one of the first things to go under stress is that sense of humor.
Yeah, it's something that you sort of.
As his hand is up.
tricked yourself
Alex's
with.
finger is up.
What I find is with Tai Chi or any other form of energy flow exercise, something odd happens with the mind structure whereby I feel if that feeling is generated, especially in muscles that are not used become achy, and then there's this feeling of if I move or do something, then it will generate pain, and that leads to this irritation. And what I have tried to do of late, Sam, is instead of having an allotted time span for doing the whole flow thing within 20 minutes, half an hour or whatever, is that why can't it be done during the day with the ordinary daily movements? For example, I don't have a normal bath per se. I have a tub and a little seat I put in the bath. So soon as I've done my morning bath, and I do the bath by bending my body from the middle down, fill up a mug of water, put it on the top. So I'm stretching my leg muscles and bending my back at the same time as having a bath. And I do that, I don't know how many times, I haven't counted it yet. I get out of the bath, I do a few squats, I kick my legs, loosen the muscles, I bend sideways, and that was when I'm doing my rolling. If I'm using public transport, or better still, walking the kids to school, set a brisk pace, move around, chat to people on the way. And I think that, coupled with the social interaction, is much better for me than doing it in one place or even going to the gymnasium and doing it in a circle of people. This can be done anytime, anywhere, with or without participation, with other people, be laughed at, laugh at other people. I think it's much better. And I'm trying to get other people involved who say, I don't have time for that. What are you doing now? How many jumps can you do in 1 minute, just standing there? In the time it takes you to say, I haven't got time for that. That's 4 at least. So, yes, Alex.
That's a good point. I was looking at the internet this afternoon, 7 o'clock it was, and I thought, well, I've got about 4 hours. And when I looked back at the clock an hour later, it was 11:15. And I thought, well, that's what happens when you're busy doing something and it's involving all your energy and your concentration, and you're enjoying it. So how time goes, and I don't realise how much inactivity is involved there.
What exactly were you doing in that time?
Just sitting and typing. It's inactivity, yeah. And so
Exactly.
to compensate, I have to put more effort into activity. Over.
So when it comes to the little ones, I'm far more energetic, and I really look forward to hugging and picking them up and throwing them about, because that increases my energy reserve even more. I'm complete. That's my check-in, by the way, for whatever it's worth.
That was a great check-in. That was great. It was worth a lot.
So let me riff on that, because part of what Tai Chi is basically it's a way of life. It's not an exercise. It's not just a philosophy. It's not just a martial art. It's not just, any of those things. It's basically a way of living. So, for example, there's one exercise where you've got your feet about shoulder width apart, and you pretty much move your hips in circles. Or in ovals, or whatever you call them, okay? And then you change the direction. And what that does is it really just gently stretches your leg muscles. It gently works.
That's not all it does.
It's not all it does. I understand, just what So it does the stretching, it does the joint exercise, and it also works on your balance, and it also works on your breathing. So for years, when I was early learning Tai Chi, I would be standing in lines at the supermarket, doing these little circles, and my kids would be laughing at me. Likewise, when you're actually doing very slow movements in posture, what people don't realize, they think, oh, slow movements in Tai Chi, that's too easy. That's not anything. It's not going to make any difference to your life. The difference is when you're actually moving very slowly and you're taking very slow steps, most of the time you're only on one leg. And what that gets you is strength of legs and also a sense of balance. That's what people don't realize when they say, oh, Tai Chi is too slow, or Tai Chi is, just for old people, So it's really interesting how you can observe these things after you practice these for a while. I know Josh has joined us too. He also, some familiarity with Tai Chi and all of that.
I really like what Jaswinder said too about how we can, incorporate, a presence in our movements in different situations in life, and think about how many times you're doing something, you're moving. How could you move maybe more softly or more presence?
Yep.
Joel is with us. Hello.
Look at this turnout. We don't even have an announcement file, but we still have a lot of people that know the link, and not all of them are on the Facebook Messenger group. That exercise you're doing right now, Jaswinder, is another Tai Chi warm-up exercise. It's basically what it says. Take your elbows, move your elbows in big circles. Move your elbows in big circles, and then reverse direction. Does a good job on the shoulders.
Now, oddly enough, this is what I keep saying to myself and to anybody else who ever gives me even half an ear to plug in. Whatever we're doing, wherever we're doing it in the world, we're all doing the same things. We're all eating the same foodstuffs. And we all should be plugging into each other and saying, we're not different. We like to think so. And we're stupid. I really think, all of these, the way of doing things, my way of living is better than your way of living. I think Colin has a point there. Why can't we just get along? Hello, Joel.
Because 10% of us are crazy, Jaswinder.
I'm not talking to you, Alex. You're not saying things I don't like.
Yeah,
There's nobody crazy.
I think that, and that's why I like what you brought up, the little things you could do is, I think part of the reason we can't is because there would be some people that would say, no, we have to do it an hour a day. That's the practice. And other people would say, well, I want to do it this way, and this is what works for me. And sometimes I might want to do the hour, and sometimes I don't. I had a friend that was trying to teach me Tai Chi. And I really wanted to learn, and I still do. And we did it, I did it for a few weeks in a row, but he insisted that it was for an hour. And then he wanted to do it. First, he wanted to precede it with a 20-minute walk. And then it was, and we had to do it. It was all these other things. I was like, all right, I'm done. I'm done. What if I decide I want to do it again? I will.
Nothing wrong with that, Stacy. I still go for long walks.
No,
I
no, no.
enjoy them.
What
I
I'm
I
think
think what Stacy was
saying,
objecting to was the requirement.
what I'm saying is that for me, what turns me off of anything is when people put in restrictions that I don't think necessarily always need to be there for me all the time. And I think in you know, Jaswinder was saying that Colin has a point. I think that's what the point, I think that's what the answer to the question is that the reason we can't all get along is because some of us insist that there's only one way of doing things. And the other half of us recognize that there are different ways. And I think that if we just separate those two groups out, things might work a little better. And not that you can't, not that
So
you
is
can
this,
collaborate with people in the other group, but it would be a good starting point.
is it like attachment to form or
You have to-
attachment to a pattern?
As soon as it's
That
your
would-
turn.
Is that what you're talking about, Stacy? Kind of like
I got
people are
confused because
attached.
3 people were talking at once. I didn't even know you were talking. I'm sorry, what'd you say?
Well, I just said it sounds like what you're saying is that people are like attached to a way of doing things. It's like an attachment to a pattern, that it has to be this kind of way, and that if we're too attached to patterns,
A long time.
then that's what creates problems. But if we sort of can move between many patterns, then we can sort of all be.
Little
we
girl
are,
has
yeah.
something to say, Glenn. Excuse, she's gone all giddy. Whoa, you're too heavy now.
Okay, we got people talking over each other, people barking over each other. Maybe we want to.
Sounds like a very good meeting already.
I'm
Glenn,
enjoying
yes,
it.
though, just to answer Glenn's question real quick. Yes, and I think that it's fine to be attached to your own way of doing things because that's your agency. But it's probably not so good to try and get other people to change their ways. They can see what you're doing, and if it works for them, they'll decide to try it. That's up to them.
And people vote with their feet. They either walk towards you or they walk away from you.
Both are good. Speak.
Well, it's a good thing if they walk away, because then they're living their own reality. They're living true to their own form.
No.
And they accept the consequences of doing that, because that's the life choices we make. We all do it.
So I love
We'll
this
do it.
conversation, right? Because so long as we're talking about individuals, I think all the things that we've been saying are true, right? But now we get people that sort of march together by 2, by 4, by 8, by 16, by 32, blah, 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 all the way up to the millions. And now, if you do something different than what they do, then what happens?
Before we get started, can we just let the little one say something so we can say hello to her and we can get on
She
to
just wants to tell, she asked me to inform everybody, it's the little baby who's coming up to 1 year old.
And it's her birthday tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
It's not this Tuesday, but
Oh,
we're gonna celebrate it tomorrow.
happy.
There we are.
tomorrow
Wish
is
her a
the
happy birthday.
27th.
Happy birthday.
We're not allowed to say it till tomorrow.
Hey, tell your baby sister that I'm only 3 days older than she is.
Absolutely.
Det var en unge som skulle bli født 3 veckor.
Okay.
Jasvinder sjöng.
Hey, the reason I love this conversation is it's meandered its way into a topic that came up last Sunday. It's a topic that we've been bouncing around for the last 3 years, which is how do we show up? For me, okay? The question is how do we show up, and then how do we interact? The two aspects of what I'm really looking at, what's happening inside me, and what's happening between you and me. And so much focus on, you know, external stuff is hey, here's what's happening between you and me, and here's what I want you to do, here's what I think you want me to do, all that sort of stuff. But there's not enough stuff about what's going on inside me, about how I come prepared to have this interaction. Likewise, how each of us comes together to have these interactions, right? And I think that's an underappreciated component of what really happens in people dynamics. I mean, psychologists, have a understanding of this, perhaps, but most people in daily interaction, I think, don't. They just come, they drink their coffee, they're hectic, they're on their way, they got a list of things to do, they've got a time budget, they got, things on their mind, stuff that happened yesterday that's still, baggage bouncing around in their brain. That's what they're presenting to each interaction. And I think if I understand anything about presence, it's to let that slide down to zero so that, it doesn't occupy all of your attention and all your, brain cycles as you're trying to interact with somebody.
It's like an uncluttering.
So let me introduce, I'm not going to name names, but last week I encountered an interaction where someone didn't want to wear a mask and was going outside, and someone who actually does wear a mask very regularly observed that, and that quickly cycled up and triggered both of them. Maybe not both of them, maybe one more than the other, okay? And I think this is happening quite often these days. And the question is, okay, so what allowances am I going to make for myself, and what compassion am I going to make for you, and how free do I feel I'm able to act versus how does this restrict my quote unquote freedom, or how does this communicate my empathy or compassion for others? And as someone also points out, those are not exactly the same thing. So all of those things come in play the more stress we introduce into society and into personal interactions. These values come and abut each other and start grating on each other. We see this over and over and over and over and over. So that was an interesting thing that I observed last week, and hopefully we'll be able to study that some more this coming week. Yeah, Alex, you have your hand up. Alex and Stacy.
Yeah, there's a heavy amount of symbolism we deal with. I mean, I deal with it in my daily life all the time, so I guess other people are also dealing with this issue. When the machine, the intelligent sentient machine that's been designed for AI, deciphers all that symbolism and tries to work out what it wants to keep and what it wants to ditch, what's rubbish and what's valuable, it uses a decision tree that's simply based on the priority, the objective, the primary directive. So the machine is wanting more input, more information to understand this primary objective. What are we focusing on? Over.
Also, I wonder what you mentioned.
Right. Can we do Stacy then Glenn?
So responding to you, Sam, I was going to say that I think that part of the challenge is to be able to figure out why the person is acting usually out of frustration. So like with the whole mask thing, a lot of people that wear masks are so angry inside because we feel like, oh, we're suffering, like we're doing this, we're doing our best, we're trying so hard, and now you're ruining it. It's like if you were trying to build, if you were thinking about if you were in kindergarten and you're trying to build this structure and you're all working together, and then somebody comes over and like, well, I'm just going to take some of these blocks, or I need it for what I want. So when you understand why the person is frustrated, it's a little bit easier. At least that's the first step, I think.
Yeah, I think so too. It always helps if you understand the reasons for why others behave the way they do. when I hear this, it kind of reminds me of this unblocking conversation. I think it was a couple of years ago. There was somebody had posted something on the internet. It had created a reaction, and we came upon this whole question of how we respond to others' behaviors and tolerance. And right towards the end, I felt that we sort of came to this, we were right before this great insight that we're totally responsible for our own behavior or our own action in every situation. While when it comes to other people's behaviors, we don't know the situation they're in, the reasons they do what they do, so we don't have to judge them. And we don't have to judge them also because I can really only influence my way of being. So that it was very interesting because it felt as if we kind of moved to this point, all of us, this understanding that it's possible to find this way of being where you're really responsible for me now. What are you thinking about that, Stephanie?
No, I didn't want to cut you off. I just wanted, I wanted to say that I think, I agree with what you're saying. And I think that's what was so important about the kind of session that we had last time. And the fact that it lasted 7.5 hours, I think is evidence of that, because the first part of it sort of, by sharing our stories, we're also giving insight to the many different ways that people react to many different things. And, you know, we could do our own sense making.
Alex?
I found it difficult to forgive people who were acting irresponsibly, and based on the judgments I was coming up with myself.
Before 4 o'clock, didn't I?
As if I was thinking to myself, what right have I got to make a judgment on somebody else's behaviour, you know?
So can I step in on this one?
Yeah.
I understand that the word judgment does trigger a lot of people. But you know, we all have memories.
Is it in your bag?
We all have the ability to evaluate behavior. In fact, we do it all the time, right? So let's suppose I started picking my nose in this second. You all would have a reaction. You all would have some thoughts inside your brain. I don't think it's necessarily useful to deny that. So I think the question is not this judgment question. I think the question is how you choose to behave. Whether you're going to choose to act out of that judgment and then, you know, say something prescriptive or negative or complaining or whiny, or whether you can lean into, oh, how would an intelligent person come up with that? Let me try and understand that. That's the generosity that I think is really what I'm interested in interactions. I'm not interested in turning off my brain so that I have no thoughts. I'm interested in figuring out how do those thoughts lead me to better behavior and better interaction. Yeah, Stace.
And to Alex, I just want to say that the fact that you even noticed that you were judging that is a really good first step. But I would suggest to remove the guilt from it, because like Sam says, we all do that. And it's good to notice that we're doing it and to not feel guilt or shame associated with having done that, because at least being aware of it, that is a positive. That is something to be proud. I think it's something to be proud of.
I'll riff on Stacy. I'll say, rather than just, okay, so that's a very, very important part, you know, is to not feel that guilt and shame. Why don't you turn that then into choice? And before you can turn it into choice, you have to now create choices. You can actually say, I could do this, or I could do that. But is that kind of limiting? Maybe I could do this also, or maybe I could do that also, or maybe I could do that also. So you can create for yourself a whole universe of options before you choose. If somebody says, and this is the standard, what is it called? There's a word for this stupid binary choice, you know? If somebody says you only have these two choices,
Yeah, sucker's choice. I think.
exactly, sucker's
Yeah.
choice, okay, then that's you falling for that. That your world all of a sudden has collapsed into only these two choices. But your world expands and you use your imagination when you say, no, those are not my only two choices. I can create an infinitude of choices. And here they are. And that's the one I'm going to pick.
I
Eastern
think
philosophy, sorry, Glenn. I was going to say Eastern philosophy and machine language. Binary choices. You can
I
take
saw
3 or
that.
4.
Yeah, I just want to say I saw Joe had some thoughts I wanted to share. I think on this.
Complicated
The man-
wording. How do you get past the point of someone else's life being completely contradictory to yours? You will always have some level of this. Groups who want to live a ravey, jump up and down music lifestyle are always going to have a noisier life than someone who wants to live in peace and quiet. So you've got to deal with those situations all the time. There's always going to be situations like that where one person's lifestyle is complete and utterly contradictory. But at the same time, there's behaviors that our species can do that are degenerative for our species. Behaviors where our interacting is causing the problems we want to get rid of. So we have a level of, there'll always be a type of lifestyle that will contradict another type of lifestyle. And recognizing that at some points, certain lifestyles are so contradictory to the others that they would impose a vast negative interaction. How do we deal with that balancing when we still need to communicate as an entire species to sustain the planet? And in that, those people want to live those lifestyles. So we need to remember trying to get to the new way and the new setup of the sort of base running of our civilization kind of needs to not interrupt their lives too much, otherwise they will become the thing that we're rubbing against. So this whole mess of trying to balance up what people want, what they understand we need to do, and recognizing that there is a certain level of people's lives where you just can't have certain behaviors, or you can't allow your civilization to degenerate into a certain point where it can't recover. This all needs very vast balancing. I mean, the complexity of our species is so utterly beautiful. But I was watching Unblocking earlier, and Kayla was talking about working around in her the garment she wears, walking around with her kids. I can't remember the name of it, but in England, it's not that long ago, that would have been seen as risque, and yet our culture's very quickly caught up to just accepting people walking around in very, very tight bikinis, even in town. All of these changes change very quickly. It's difficult to balance everyone's perception when they can't see what's wrong with behaving that way, why it becomes a problem. It's not something we want to be a problem. We all sort of go back to the idea that we can do as much of what we want as we can. There will always be those points where we have to recognize it's having a substantial negative consequence on the whole society for an individual's or a small group's behaviors. It's not like seeing the group as the problem. It's recognizing how those behaviors are either resource too demanding or nature too destroying or too rubbing with all the other groups around them. When the group can't be social enough to recognize they're around other groups, when can you accept that it is a problem at the moment? We can get past those problems by recognizing we all have different locations we need to be in to do certain activities. In fact, I like it that way. I mean, raves and festivals have always been out in the middle of nowhere to try and minimize the disruption on the rest of civilization. Even free parties, I love free parties because the guys who run them, they take all their gear, they'd get up there, set up, cause minimal problem, and have bags and people organized so that when the rave's finished, they leave no evidence. There's groups of people who want to stop those free parties because they see them as disruptive. They're in the middle of nowhere. Not disrupting anyone, they're out in the middle of nowhere having a good time. But somehow people want to stop it because you're not allowed to go have a good time in the woods. I'm done. Thanks.
I think before answering that question, that I think there's a lot of judgment in that question that needs to be unpacked. Not that I necessarily want to do that right now, but I just want to point out that, yeah, well, I just said it. I think that the question needs to be unpacked and separated and handled separately.
Josh, who was about to speak? I didn't quite notice.
Josh is with us. Good to see you, Josh.
Josh came on screen, so I just thought it might be good to let Josh make an opening statement since we're 37 minutes into this.
I was just going to ask if everyone checked in. I was got here about 10 minutes late.
I don't think we really did check-ins. Well, Jasmine did,
Yeah.
but he labeled it after the fact.
Kind of just been having a good organic conversation so far.
It's very nice.
I've been here for most of it, so much love to everybody. I'm going to stay quiet. Thank you so much, Sam.
So I wanted to respond a little bit to Joel's question, and that is, if I look at the way apartment buildings are structured, almost every case that question comes to a point, right? There's always people that want to have parties late at night. There's always people that want to have some quiet and peace. So I think in most cases, I don't see most apartments breaking out into riots and fights because they've worked out sort of this peaceful coexistence. May not be perfect for either side, right? One side can't have peace and quiet all the time. The other side can't have parties all the time, but usually they have some kind of a 9 p.m. or 10 p.m. or whatever, where they say, okay, now it's quiet time. And they kind of coexist that way. Obviously, if you're able to get yourself, 5 miles out into the forest, that becomes easier to separate the two concerns. So I would like to recognize that most of society recognizes they can't have always what they want all the time. That most people recognize there's a coexistence and I got to use my judgment and I got to make some allowances for other people. And yeah, I can't just cross the street. There's a car coming right now. And no, I can't just take that apple. It belongs to somebody else. And, we have all these conventions that we do follow so that we can coexist. I think the question is in these extreme cases, extreme where one insists on essentially crossing the boundaries or affecting someone else's ability to coexist or to do so in kind of a healthy way because of some kind of sense of entitlement or sense of right that they've got that allows them to make that behavior okay for themselves. That's where I think the problem is. So I think society has to exist to deal with extreme cases, unfortunately. But I think most people seem to be reasonable. in my assessment. Alex, then Glenn.
You need to unmute, Alex.
Sorry, I'm muted. I've got a document I've been looking at about the service concepts from this World Vision community, and it mentions responsibility, consideration, and the things that are involved when you're dealing with complex situations and other human behaviour and interactivity. So it offers vision and clarity, humility, and all those wonderful spiritual things. Neutrality in situations where people are deeply emotionally involved and caught up in fundamentalist belief systems. So that it's an opportunity to get some equality of trust involved with an organisation by developing a set of principles that are unilaterally observable and acceptable by everyone. That's a fantastic agreement, sort of agreement you'd find in a group of people pushing for democracy and socialisation in communities, activists and green groups and all that sort of thing. People who really are concerned about where we're going as a species. Over.
Kind of like super agreements or yeah, really great agreements. And this is really interesting. As I followed this line, there was a thought that developed in my mind with what Joel mentioned, that some behaviors, I guess we have to admit that they are not acceptable. Some kinds of behaviors which are clearly harmful to others. And it made me think about the law. And what's the meaning of the law? Because most of our societies have laws. And most judicial systems are such that laws can be changed. So the laws which exist at any given moment should be a result of a kind of an evolutionary process where minds have come together, one has discussed, and then some laws are more controversial than others. Drug laws, for example, very controversial, probably not very wise in most countries today because it restricts people from being able to have a healthy use of certain substances that could have an incredible healing effect. So there's those laws, which you could say are like with a corrupt basis, maybe, you know, there's economical reasons, etc. But then you have other laws like murder is not allowed. It's not allowed to hurt another person. And those laws seem to exist in every judicial system and has always existed. So maybe we can say that over time, as you know, societies have developed, there are some laws which have stood the test of time and which in fact everyone does agree on. And that you could say there are certain minimum standards that any reasonable person would agree that you're not allowed to hurt somebody, you're not allowed to kill somebody. It's like, if there's an exception, it's in a desperate situation where you don't have any alternative. That situation should be avoided in the first place. And that then you also have other agreements where you have, for example, societies in Europe or in certain non-countries that have systems which say, okay, we're going to have a system where we make sure all the citizens of our countries have their basics taken care of, like basic health care, enough money to, you know, get food on the table, enough opportunities, you know, the basics. You take care of everybody above a certain minimum, and that also turns out to have been successful. and it's been relatively successful. It hasn't been perfect, but there are countries who have succeeded with plenty millions of inhabitants to have a fairly high general standard of living and a fairly low amount of violence and social unrest. So, maybe that can give us some pointers to the society of the future. I think Joshua has some thoughts on this.
So let's do Josh and then me.
Thank you, Sam. And I didn't get to say happy birthday to you, Sam. I know it's belated, but happy birthday. Hope you had a good one. Hope it was enjoyable with the family. And I was just going to say,
yeah.
I'm just continuing off of what you said, Glenn, is taking care of the people and then circling that back to allow the people to take care of the nation state. So allowing for taxes to be collected so the nation state is taken care of, but also taking care of the base of the people is a tricky thing. And, sometimes it works for a few million, sometimes 100, sometimes 200 million. Can it work for 1.3, I think is where India is at as a nation, the largest nation state soon to be in our country, in our world, our entire globe. So that circle, I just wanted to bring up that people should be taken care of by the nation state, and the people should take care of the nation state. And if that balance can be found, then everything is cozy and wonderful.
They go together. And they go together, because if the nation state takes care of people, people respect the nation state. That's where I'm getting at. It becomes this mutual, respectful relationship.
Yes.
So I like the way this conversation has flowed to this point, which is how we take care of each other and how we then take care of ourselves. If I may, Alex, let me reference, though, that about 2 weeks ago and reiterated last week, I had offered to present the community of impact ideas one more time, because I think it's now relevant in a new light. And secondly, some people haven't been introduced to it. And to me, it's one way of alleviating this pressure for making agreements and making laws and making regulations and focusing on all this, prescriptive stuff. So I wanted to recognize that it's about 47 minutes in. I would offer to present those ideas. To do it, typically takes about 25 to 30 minutes. But if you want to, intersperse through it some questions, that's also fine. So I just wanted to offer to do that. I think it ties together nicely some of the ideas behind why GCC is such of interest and primal for me. And potentially, I think de-emphasizes this this focus on external behavior regulation, laws, guidelines, constraints, and stuff like that. So I just wanted to put that out there and see if that was something that we could either do or then defer for some other time again. Stacy, then Josh.
Well, I'm happy to do that. I just want to highlight the connection between what Glenn and Josh were talking about and the situation with the masks and the frustration, because I think it's really important to not lose focus of the fact that having people's basic needs met eliminate some of the frustrations that then add and contribute to the whole of society.
Yep.
And that is really overlooked, in my opinion.
Right.
Yes.
Josh?
Yeah, just staying on that same note is making sure here in this conversation, all of our basic needs are met, and then taking care of the ask that you're asking, Sam. So just to check in and make sure everyone's needs are taken care of first, and thanks for doing that, doing a great job at that.
So there's a common value in society, in most communities, about what's right, what's good for people, what's good governance for a country and a nation, and about 80% agree. which means if you had everybody voting, it'd be like Josh says, nice and peaceful and harmonious. The problems occur when the electoral system is broken down. It's not working. Only about less than half of the population are voting, and that's the half who have a vested interest. The half that have big shareholdings in the pharmaceutical companies, for example. So the idea to get the bot market voting is a good idea. The bottom of the pyramid, that's where there's 4.5 billion people who are not active participants in the global society democracy because they're not given the opportunity to have their voice heard. We can fix that. We can fix that. It's just, anybody who can make a web page can join the group and fix that, help fix it, because the web pages are linked together with AI, and they point us somewhere. We can look at that analytically. Over.
Sam, do you want to see if Kayla and Colin want to check in, and then maybe have a show of hands if we go on to the community of impact? Because I really like
about to invite. Yes.
Good idea.
Kayla, welcome. Colin, welcome.
And Tees, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to leave you out.
Silent observer, please.
Colin has chosen to materialize. Sorry, reference to the movie.
Cue the Star Wars music theme tune.
Different movie, actually.
Want to check in and say hello, Colin, Kayla?
Oh, go ahead.
Colin, you hit the buzzer first.
I couldn't understand Colin at all. It sounded like his microphone was at a really high sensitivity.
Well, I just want to say hi. I am not feeling very well. I've got a headache and a stomach ache, but I am enjoying this conversation, so that's why I appeared. So yeah.
Can we
Hello?
send you some chicken soup via Grubhub?
Grubhub? Absolutely.
Okay, let me take a look at that. Oh wait,
Better.
I don't have your address, and you should not give your address here.
Drone delivery, chicken soup drop off.
Right. Stacey, would you like to moderate us through this?
The mic? Can you hear the mic? Is it still
Yes, I can
broken?
hear.
Yeah,
There's
yeah,
crickets.
no, you're coming through now.
Okay, maybe the volume was up too high.
There's crickets, like what Alex used to have.
It's interesting
Okay.
when you talk, there's a little yellow bar that comes on, different from like the like when I'm talking right now, there's a yellow line that goes all around my square. When you talk, that yellow line is only taking up a little bit of room on the bottom. If that means anything to you computer people.
Yeah, I think it means my microphone is starting to deteriorate in some way.
Now you're good.
Well, if the crickets come back, let me know. Maybe it was somebody else. Complicated stuff. Yeah, no, same thing with Kayla. Same check-in. So COI.
Well, you don't feel well, Colin?
Actually, I'll get over it. It's not a big deal. It's gonna have to do with anybody here. So, you know, shit happens, but it's not a big deal really. Nothing a chicken soup couldn't fix, Sam.
I think that's a request for chicken soup.
Yeah, good chicken soup.
I gotta get deliverchickensoup.com now.
Good chicken soup.
Can I get some turmeric in that, please?
Okay, we're ready. Community of
Go
impact.
for it, Sam. The community of impact.
Stacy, would you like to moderate, since if I'm focused on these ideas, I may not be quite so sensitive to what's going on around.
Sure.
So stop me if there's some urgent burning question that somebody's got and
I'll
I'm
use
not.
my pinky if I think it's something urgent. I'll use my pinky. Okay.
Or just speak up if I don't see your pinky, because.
All right. I'll try that. I'll try the pinky first, and if you don't see it, I'll jump in.
All right, then what I'm gonna do is, let me give you like 30 seconds of backup here, okay? And that is that I worked with Dino Karabeg and David Price for over half a year to come up with the foundation of this thing called the Community of Impact. And it was further refined with more interaction, including Alexander Laszlo and Frode Hageland. And this probably took place around 2013, 2014, maybe even a bit of 2015. So anyway, the ideas I'm presenting are from that era, but I haven't found a lot of need to drastically change any of that ever since. So I wanted to see if this made sense. So they were put together in a slideshow, well, presentation deck, which I would offer to walk through fairly quickly, if that's okay. And I know that's going to take people's faces off the screen. So some of you can choose to do side-by-side mode if you want to still see faces here. And so I just want to ask permission before I do that.
Permission.
Okay, I'll try and keep it as quick as I can, okay? But again, I'll also try and respond to questions if there are questions, okay? So I'm going to start sharing my screen now. For some reason, I cannot do so because my mouse is stuck to one screen once I'm in presentation mode. This is strange. PowerPoint is keeping my mouse on just one screen. All right, let me share my screen and then start presentation mode. Okay, let me do it that way. Let me go to start my screen, share screen, and boy, my machine is so slow.
I had to fix that once myself by changing from extended screen to duplicated screen over.
Man, my machine is so slow. I've got barely anything running on this, and it's taking like a whole minute for it to offer, hey, do you want to share screen 1 or screen 2? Okay, I'm going to share screen 1. Man, this is slow. I'm sorry for the painful moments, but I'm doing what my machine will allow me to do. This is my work laptop too. It's over 2 years old, and
you could say
this is unbearable. This is
Kerouac.
unbearable. Maybe this will not work.
Shut down some background processing.
Okay, I'm going to shut down my.
Sam,
Yeah.
Tisa's
No, that's included. Yeah,
It comes and goes in spits and starts.
there it starts.
now we see a blank screen.
My machine is horrible. My machine is horrible. All right.
Sam has just started sharing his screen.
All right, I'll tell you what. I have to shut down. There's not much running here. I've got my mail program and my browser running, but I can't even get to my mail program.
Here it goes.
Shut it down.
Here it is. Here it is.
Before I shut down, so
Good.
the session will continue.
Here it is.
And then I'm going to reboot. So Stacy, if that's okay, I'm going to make you host.
Okay.
I'm going to shut down. The recording will stop, but when I rejoin, or maybe actually while you're host, maybe you could actually start the recording on the cloud. See if you can do that.
Oh, I don't know how to do that.
Glenn or somebody can walk you through that. There's a recording option way down at the bottom, and when you click it, it's going to say to your local machine or to the cloud, and you can just say to the cloud, and then I'll be able to download it later. But I do have
Okay.
to quit. You know, my machine is just totally frozen otherwise. So let me shut down here, and then I'll
You
I'll
make me
rejoin you in
host
about
first. You
3 or
didn't,
4
oh, you did make me
You are
host.
host. You are
I see.
host. Okay. So I'm
All
going
right.
to leave. Okay.
Okay. Okay, now that he leaves.